If you struggle to write copy in your business, whether that is copy for your social media captions or whether you're writing pamphlets and brochures for your business or email writing, if this is something that just, it's just not your thing and you find it hard to write either conversational or conversional copy, then this is the podcast episode for you. I have an amazing guest, Elena from 23 Wise Words, and I can't wait for you to hear our interview. There is so much gold in here, so listen up. I'm super excited to bring you this episode. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there. Welcome to episode 134 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. I can't thank you enough for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making me one of them. Sometimes I still kick myself that I'm up to, episode like 134. It's like, seriously, when I started this podcast almost 3 years ago now, I honestly thought I'd run out of things to say at about episode 27. So every time I say episode 134 or 133, I think to myself, wow, I've still got something to say. So I'm glad that you have joined me. I am, of course, the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job to help make your business life simpler by bringing you podcast episodes like today. I am super excited for you to hear our interview today. I have a very special guest. Her name is Elena Connolly, and she has a business called 23 Wise Words. And we are talking all about copywriting, as in those words that you write to engage your audience and to sell your products. And we are digging deep into this as well. We are digging deep because Elena actually has a psychology degree. And so science of writing is actually her jam. She loves to think about the science of the way we write, and she shares so much of that with us today. We are talking about the difference between conversational copy and conversional copy, and there is a difference. So if you write emails, write social media captions, write pamphlets, and so forth, then this podcast episode is definitely for you. So grab yourself a cuppa, and if you're driving, strap yourself in, because this is a fabulous episode with so much gold. And look, honestly, you're probably going to want to listen to this twice just to get down all the gold that Elena shares with us. So anyway, without further ado, let's have a chat to Elena. Elena, I'm really a bit excited to have you come on the podcast and talk copywriting with us today, because I think it's a subject that small business owners do struggle with, and I know that you know that. But for my audience who perhaps doesn't know you so well, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your business?
Yeah. So I'm Elle from 23 Wise Words. As you said, I'm a copywriter. So I predominantly write websites and kind of really focus in on that sales copy or conversion copywriting. I think in the copywriting community, we call it conversion copywriting, but in the rest of the world, people are kind of like, what does that mean? So I kind of use the term sales copy, because I think people can then understand that it's kind of the end game, I suppose, is more around getting the sale, or at least encouraging people to take a bigger action than just read your blog or kind of read your Instagram caption and like it or whatever. So I kind of split the two into kind of content writing and copywriting, and I very much focus on the copywriting side. I've been in business for about 5.5, 6 years now, and my background is actually in psychology as well. So definitely drawing on those kind of psychology principles, sales psychology, consumer behavior, and really bringing that into the copywriting as well. I think that's something that people don't often kind of put together, the fact that actually kind of if you're thinking of sales when you're talking to someone, you kind of have, there's lots of training, there's lots of people that do it as a profession, these kind of salespeople or training about sales and how to close the sale and that kind of thing. And what people don't understand is actually kind of writing copy is the same, but it's just in the written form. So there's lots of people kind of don't understand that actually write copywriting is selling as the same as speaking is selling. But also not kind of going down that sleazy sales route and finding a way to sell in a way that is true to your business and ethically correct. You know, I always say that copy or sales copy is only sleazy if it's like the tool, and if you're using the tool incorrectly, then of course it's going to come across the wrong way. But if you are using the tool correctly, then it's not sleazy and it's not kind of making someone do something they don't want to do. You're actually just kind of trying to solve a problem for them. So nice. That's a kind of a bit of background about my business.
Yeah, beautiful. So my first question is 23 wise words. What does that mean? Where did that name come from? I'm always fascinated by people's names.
I do get asked this a lot, actually. So there's two stories. There's the media version and there's the real version. So the real, okay, no, I'll start with the media version. So the media version is that the number 23 has a kind of a lot of I suppose mythical connotations, in that there's lots of, so if you kind of Google the number 23, so much comes up. There's good and bad. There's kind of the male and female create combined 23 chromosomes each to create human life. There's the number 23. Michael Jordan always wore the number 23 because he always thought he was lucky. And then there's stuff like conspiracy theorists who believe like the 9/11 dates of 9/11 add up to 23. So 11/9/2001, 2 and 1. There's all sorts. But anyway, so it's very, once I'd called my business 23 wise words, everyone's like, oh, I know why you called it 23 wise words. There's all this kind of mythical like folklore about it. And in reality, I wanted the wise words as the domain name. Obviously that wasn't available. And my son was born on the 23rd of August. So I was like, 23 works well, so 23 wise words it was. And I'm always a believer that I think people get too hung up on names. I think it's nice to have a nice story around your name, but I have known business owners who have just like agonized for months and months and months about finding the right name. And actually it's like a person's name. Once you know the name, it almost becomes a little bit wallpaper. It's just the name, and the words and the name and the phrase just kind of becomes what you're known for, but not necessarily all this like meaning behind it. So that's the kind of backstory to it. But also I just kind of always say to my clients, especially when they're going through rebrands and they're kind of like, oh, we're going to change our name, or they're just starting out and they're trying to think of a name, I always say, look, don't overthink it. You know, it's nice to have a little bit of a story. Obviously you need to make sure the URL is available, but like, don't kind of spend hours and hours and hours just like going through different names, and just kind of find one. It'll stick. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, my audience will probably
yours is very simple. Yours
my
is like
story.
You were just kind of like, let's say what is on the tip.
Yeah, but it was kind of, I typed into a domain name, socialmediaandmarketing.com.au, and it said it was available. And I was like, oh, that's just ridiculous. How can that be available? That's the name. And then I went to register the business name and that was taken. So I tacked Australia on the end of it and the name was born. Like, it was very simplistic, but it was kind of like almost like the stars align. I'm like, well, how can that domain name be available? You know, I think this was like 2017. It was just like, oh, that's just silly. So yes. So yeah, but it's still, I do like a story for sure. And I had a guest on just the other day who had a very similar story to you, that their name White Deer meant so much, but at the end of the day, she just liked it. But when she Googled it afterwards, it meant so much. So yeah, no, that's awesome. So Al, let's have a bit of a talk, because you've mentioned in your little intro and our little chat before we press record about sales copy and about conversional copy. Now, I talk a lot about copywriting, but I guess a lot of the copywriting I talk about is kind of like that content writing, basically. So can you just explain a little bit what the difference would be for a small business owner when they're trying to think about sales copy or conversional copy versus, I guess, content writing?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a big one, and it's something I see all the time. So in like the Facebook groups, or in the kind of when people are looking for someone to support their business and the writing side, I see all the time kind of, I'm looking for a copywriter to do this, or I'm looking for a content writer to do this. And it's kind of what they're actually asking isn't the role of those, the role of those two writers is very different. So a content writer, kind of traditionally or within the industry, would be someone who, if you think of content marketing, so there's someone who might write your content marketing. So anything from blog posts to captions for your social media to ebooks, anything that's kind of more about building brand awareness and I suppose almost not kind of more fast and furious, stuff that you kind of might write, you're writing out to keep your content marketing alive, to keep people finding you, to keep people engaging with you, rather than with a specific focus in mind. And sales copy or copywriting traditionally would be about kind of, it's more pointed towards that sales end. So it's websites, it's landing pages, it's advertisements, it's email sequences. Some email sequences might fall into content writing, some might fall into copywriting. There are a bit of a blurred line, but yeah, it's more trying to get people towards that sale a little bit more, a bit more kind of a bit more of an action in mind, rather than brand awareness and kind of getting your kind of content and engagement up. So yeah, there's two very, and like I said, the lines blur.
Yeah.
A lot of copywriters will easily be able to write content. So I started in content, and it kind of, you can kind of progress to copy. What I will say to people is just to be careful if you are looking for someone who says they are a copywriter and you are looking specifically for sales copy. Quite often content writers don't transition to that skill so well. So yeah, just for kind of people out there that are looking for that support, if you are looking for someone to write ads and landing pages and something that really does lead to a sale or to an action, then really try and look specifically for people that are calling themselves sales copywriters or conversion copywriters rather than content writers, because it is a kind of different skill.
Yeah. Okay. Great advice. Thank
Sense.
you. Thank you. So how has
Yeah.
your psychology degree helped you with copywriting? How, like, if we think
Yeah.
of, taking people from, point A to point B, which is actually buying the product, what are humans doing that can kind of put into copy to help move them along that funnel as such, from your point of view, I
Yeah.
guess, from that, your extra training?
Yeah, so there is so much involved, like kind of underlying. I always say when I'm writing copy that every word is strategic. So although although you're kind of, you obviously need to make it sound nice, and you need to kind of adhere to certain grammatical structures and things like that, and using kind of nice rhythmic flows to your sentences, that's the kind of art side. So there is an art side to copy, which is using metaphors, using storytelling, using alliteration, using flow, short sentences, long sentences, cadences, like kind of making your writing interesting. And then there's the science. And I think the science is what gets forgotten a lot. So I think SEO falls under the science as well. There's kind of a lot you can do with kind of SEO writing, although in my opinion, that kind of SEO copywriting, I don't think the Google algorithms are so sophisticated now, they're not necessarily looking for those keywords anymore. They're looking for robust copy and topics around it rather than keywords. So although SEO falls under that kind of science, I'd say, but the massive part of the science is the sales psychology side. So good copywriting is like 9 parts psychology, 1 part wordsmithing. That's what I always say as well. So just knowing kind of what sparks someone to make a decision or not make a decision is crucial. it's the kind of age old marketing kind of spiel. You have to know your target audience, and of course you do, and everybody's told that. But with copywriting, you kind of, what you're wanting to try and do is reflect what's in the person's head on the page. So it really is so important to kind of think about, like, the words you use to describe what you do are 9 times out of 10 very different to the way your customer or your client would describe what you do. So the psychology behind that is kind of getting into their hearts and minds and reflecting that in the page. Always making sure you're using the words you and your rather than I and we. So speaking directly to the reader, making them feel part of the conversation with you rather than just kind of talking at them. A big thing I always see is, especially on websites, people talking about themselves too early on. So on a homepage, quite often I'll see a homepage and it's kind of, these are our values and this is our mission. And it's like, that's not the right place. You know, you have to always start by talking about the reader. Another little tip is that psychologically, we like to avoid pain more than we like to gain a benefit. So if you start your copy with a pain point or a problem, you're much more likely to hook the person in. And there's a little formula that we use, which is,
keep going, sorry.
all right, I'll tell you the little formula, because I think this is something that people would find really useful. So if you're sat down at a blank page or a blank screen and you just kind of like don't know where to start, using this little formula can really help. And you can apply it to emails, you can apply it to Instagram captions, you can apply it to web copy, and you'll see it all the time once I point it out to you. So the copywriting formula is problem, aggravation, solution, and outcome. So and this could only just form kind of one paragraph, but you start with the problem. So what's the big problem that you're solving? You aggravate that problem slightly. So you add another problem onto it. You talk about your solution, and then you talk about the outcome. And it's so important. This is what I see all the time as well, is people don't, what we call in copywriting, close the story loop. So they don't tell people why they should care about what you've just said. And that's where the outcome comes in. So always talking about the benefit, like what you've just said, what's the ultimate benefit? And the way I always frame it to myself is the what's in it for me, or the so what. So someone's read something and then they're in their head like, so what? Like, why does this matter to me? So always close that story loop by talking about the outcome afterwards. So I'll give you a little example of that formula in action. So if you, for example, writing for Weight Watchers or some kind of like weight loss company, you might say your problem might be, are you struggling to fit into your favorite jeans? So that's the kind of problem statement that you might start with.
And you get the head nod test
problem by saying, yes, exactly, the head nod.
Yep.
And then you might aggravate that problem by being like, and summer's just around the corner, and people are like, kind of like, oh, or your holiday's just around the corner, and people are like, oh no, yeah, that's true, aggravate it. Then you talk about the solution. Have you heard of our 30-day weight loss challenge? Outcome, feel great and confident on the beach this summer. So you can see how it's just a kind of paragraph. And obviously I've kind of exaggerated that for dramatic effect. You might not go like kind of really delve that far, but like you can see how it's just a statement and a kind of paragraph. It doesn't have to go on forever, but it's just a way of hooking people in and then saying how you can solve the problem in a kind of nice, succinct formularic way. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean by the science side of copywriting. And the really good news is for business owners that you can learn science, because a lot of people kind of are like, I can't write, I hate writing, I'll never be able, and I always say to people, look, the bad news is that you are always going to have to write for your business. If you own a business, as much as you grow your business, unfortunately, if you feel that way, the writing side will grow as well. It's kind of the more you grow, the more you're going to have to write, or at least you might have to outsource, and then you need to know what good writing looks like when it comes back to you. So that's the bad news. But the good news is there's so much science involved in copywriting that you can learn the basics, and you can learn the basics in such a way that you can really elevate your writing to kind of the way you feel more confident about what you're doing. You don't sit down at a blank screen anymore. You kind of know where to start with things. And it can really put your business at a kind of competitive advantage because you've got this skill that's so transferable. Like it can really kind of, I think, because I'm biased about it, but make the difference between kind of really elevating your business, or kind of just struggling with it forever. But you can learn the science, is what I'm saying. And there's a lot of science to learn.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for the example, because my question was going to be, I guess, around pain points. What is a pain point? But you explained that very
Yeah.
beautifully in that example. Thank you. Because, I guess we talk about pain points and we talk about, these words, but sometimes not everyone in the audience is kind of like, well, what do you mean by pain point? But no, you explained that so very
Yeah.
well. Thank you. On your website, you actually have the line, which I really love, killer copy to create conversations. So could we
Yeah.
extend on that just a little bit? Because we've talked about sales, but you're talking to me, that's kind of like, asking for the sale, but creating the conversations is a little bit different in
Yeah.
my head. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a copywriter, but creating conversations
Yeah.
looks a little bit different to asking for the sale.
Yeah, it does. And look, there's different. So this is where the lines do blur a little bit in terms of like sales copy or conversion copy. It depends. When we're talking sales copy, we are kind of predominantly talking about the sale as the end kind of outcome. Whereas with conversion could be a follow on Instagram. The conversion could be a download of an ebook, so there's different ways of converting people. And I always say that what you're trying to get people to do is move through the journey with you. So we move through the stages of awareness, which is a kind of another marketing term that we use quite a lot. So people might come to you being completely unaware that they even have a problem that you can solve. Like they may even not know that, say, for example, in my business, a business owner might be kind of ticking along nicely and getting quite a lot of traffic to their website. Maybe it's not converting, but they don't necessarily know that's the problem at the moment. So I might put out content which kind of talks about converting and what the kind of, I suppose, benefits of increasing your conversions can be, and how it helps you kind of make sales while you sleep and that kind of thing. So therefore, when I'm writing that copy, my conversion is just to get them along the stage of awareness, so that they then know they have a problem, and then they know about that I can solve that problem, and then they make the decision to buy. So, and that would never happen in one piece of content. So you kind of moving people through those different stages, and the conversions, I suppose the commitments, let's say, go from kind of low to higher. So the first commitment might just be a follow on Instagram. The second commitment or conversion might be downloading a checklist, or downloading a kind of 5-day email challenge, or whatever your kind of lead magnet might be. And then the next conversion or next part might be kind of booking in a discovery call. And then so you kind of, the conversions increase in commitment, and so do the kind of conversations, I suppose. So that's where I think there's a kind of a little bit of a difference between conversion copywriting and sales copywriting. And just to add more confusion, we've got content, we've got sales, we've got conversion, but please don't feel overwhelmed. But there is a slight difference, just because of where your potential client or customer is in their buying journey, so you just have to make sure you're writing and creating content or copy that covers all the stages of awareness, and not just focusing on the sales side, and not just focusing on the blogging, and which blogs are great for kind of getting people aware of what you do and solving the problem, but they're not great for converting to sales. So it's just matching the piece of content to the stage in the buying journey of your customers and the conversation that you kind of have with them at that point, without scaring them. Because you don't want to kind of you don't want to kind of jump in and be like, buy my work with me, buy my product, when they have no idea that you can solve a problem they've got. So it's just getting the conversation right, the tone of the conversation, just like you do in real life, so that's kind of
my audience is very much a mixture of service-based versus retail-based businesses. Do you have any tips or tricks around the differences in the way that you might write sales copy? Because I guess retail can have a much shorter buying cycle. Like, I see a candle, I like a candle, I buy a candle. I see a program, I want to be nurtured a little bit more. I'm not quite sure whether I need that program or not. Sell it to me, and then I buy. So the lead time or the customer journey can take so much longer. So do you have any tips or tricks around that?
Yeah, look, I do predominantly focus on the service businesses, and I have written a little bit of website copy and bits and pieces for product businesses, but Look, the like, know and trust factor that you need to build for a service business is, like you said, massively different to the product business. And that's because I suppose with the people I work with, it doesn't necessarily apply to every service business, but people are tending to work more one-on-one. You know, they kind of need to know who it is they're going to work with, or at least know, they want to know that their kind of values are aligned with the service that they're going to kind of get. Whereas with a product, although there's a lot of kind of change in people's sentiment around wanting to buy products from businesses whose values align with their own, yeah, like you said, that like, know and trust factor isn't as important, because quite often the face behind the product isn't necessarily known. So yeah, it's just down to lead times, like stages of awareness, like you said. So someone in a product or retail business can go from being completely unaware they have that problem to making the sale in 15 minutes, you know, if you're there on social media. So it's just down to the kind of product, the buying life cycle, and how quickly you can move people through that stage of awareness very, very quickly with a product. Whereas with a service, it doesn't tend to take a little bit longer. Although some luxury products, it does depend on the price point as well. So if the price point's high, then you might need, this stat's changing all the time, but something like 8 touch points before you are willing to think about buying a product that's of a more kind of a higher price point. That statistic might have changed, so don't quote me on that, but it's a lot of, there's a lot of points, and it's just down to price point and down to kind of the product you're selling or the service you're selling. So lots of differences, and it's a good question, because it's definitely something that business owners need to be aware of if they are selling. And a lot of service businesses have actually started productizing their services now and selling these digital products. So it's kind of become a mixture of both. And that's kind of what I've done with my course, I suppose, in that I now have this digital product to sell. And that kind of requires a different thought around sales copy and kind of how that will work, because it is slightly different. So it's definitely something to consider.
Beautiful. Thank you. So you've given so many great tips and tricks here, Al, today already. Is there anything we haven't touched on? Have you got any other tips or tricks for around either the sales copy or the conversion copy that you could share with us?
Yeah, definitely. Look, what I would always say is, and it's something I touched on earlier, you have to write with the words that your customer or client is using. So, and I hear this all the time. You kind of like, oh, I know what words they use. I know what words they use because I speak to them, or I've seen them in emails. And like, you don't always know. So what I always say is do a little bit of voice of customer research before you go to write anything. And the good thing about voice of customer research is, if you don't know what to write, you're struggling for your socials, you're struggling for your blog posts, doing a little bit of this can give you so much good topic information and topic inspiration. So the way to do voice of customer research, like the easiest way, is to use Facebook, because for whatever reason, people love like talking about their problems on Facebook. And there is a group for everything. So I promise you, whatever niche you are in, there will be a Facebook group for it. And the way to do it would be to go in the group, or you don't even need to go in the group. You can actually just search on the main Facebook search bar, type in the problem that your audience might have, or the problem that you solve. Click on posts so that you're always just seeing the posts, otherwise you'll get just mountains of information. And what you'll see there is people who have written Facebook posts in groups about the problem they have. And you can then look at those posts. How have they worded it? How have they talked about their challenge? What comments have people said? How have other people talked about that problem? And literally just copy and paste into a document called Voice of Customer, and you will just get so much inspiration and so many good ideas for how to actually reflect your customer or client's voice in your copy. So that would be something that I always say to people: just don't sit down and think you can start writing, because that's when it's daunting and overwhelming, and that's when you'll spend 4 hours with nothing on the page. So which is everyone's worst fear. People are like, it takes me all day to write a blog post, and I'm like, even if you just spend 10 minutes doing a little bit of voice of customer research. Facebook is great. Podcast reviews are great as well. So if there's a podcast that talks about the problem you solve or the industry you're in, go on and read the reviews, and you'll get loads of great voice of customer research there. So just doing a little bit of research up front will just add so much value to your copy. It makes it strategic, and it helps you out because you don't have to start thinking of things from scratch. So that would be something that I always want to kind of say to business owners, just to help them out, because I think writing can be hard, especially because at school we're taught to write a certain way.
Yes.
Kind of like, it has to be academic, it has to be grammatically correct, you have to kind of make sure everything's almost without personality, and then suddenly you become a business owner and it's like, oh no, you have to write like a human. And you have to connect and emotionally connect with your audience, and that's when people are kind of like, whoa, hang on, I don't know how to write like that. I kind of was taught a different way. So you can teach yourself the marketing way to write, and I'm really passionate about kind of building people's copy confidence so they don't feel like they can't write. And I hate it when people say I can't write or I hate writing, because I'm like, you can learn tips and tricks to make it easier, so it's not that thing you hate.
Yeah, that's an amazing tip. I love that. And you know what? I'm going to do that myself. I've never done that before. Gone and I've had a look in Facebook groups,
So
but I've
good.
never used this main search function. I've used the search function within a group that I know my target audience is in. But that's a great tip. Thank you. I will be off on that when I get time today, for sure.
Just be warned of the rabbit warren, because you start and you like, honestly, you'll be like hours later clicking, you'll have clicked through. The other good thing actually is that you, on those Facebook groups, so people will comment back and say, oh, you should check out this person, and you can do some really good competitor research that way as well, where like if someone's kind of suggested someone to help solve that person's problem, go on their website and read their testimonials. Like when you're doing competitor research, you're not looking at how your competitors written their copy or their website or whatever. What you're doing is you want to read the testimonials that are on their website, because they're your target audience as well. So they're talking in the testimonials about how their problem was solved, what the problem was in the first place. So that's voice of customer research as well. And it's not about copying it, it's just another form of voice of customer research. So I always recommend going on the competitor sites and doing that as well.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Thank you. Another killer tip. Great.
Right.
Oh, beautiful. Al, you've been amazing. This has been such a great conversation. I'm sure my audience is going to love it. I have loved it. Any 23 wise words that you would like to leave us with before we finish up?
Oh, wow.
Or just a wise
I will
word.
leave you with a little wise word. Maybe not one, but there's a little quote that I like to remember, which is, copy isn't written, it's assembled. And the reason I like that is because it goes back to that idea of science, and that if you think strategically about what you write and you go back to the science and use those kind of formulas like the one I've told you, and like just kind of starting with the problem, that's another kind of little scientific psychology tip, then it'll always convert, not always convert, but it'll elevate your writing. So don't think of copy as writing, think of it as something you assemble, something you strategically think about, and something that really you thinking behind every word, what's the science behind writing this word. So, and I think that makes it easier. You might think that kind of complicated, but for me it's almost like you've got that how-to manual behind you, and so it's not so scary then, because you're kind of like, okay, well I can learn how to do it, and this is like an actual how-to manual behind you. So yeah, that would be my parting wise words.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. If any of my listeners want to get in contact, what's the best place to send them to to find out a little bit more about what you do, or to ask you some questions?
Yeah, probably Instagram, so at 23 wise words. I'm on Instagram a lot, sharing all my tips and tricks of the trade. So yeah, that's probably the best place. My website's 23 wise words as well, so you can find me there. But yeah, Instagram's probably the first place I'd go.
Beautiful.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. So yeah,
send you a DM or something. I will have those links in the show notes for sure. Elena, thank you so much for coming on today and speaking wisely to us. That's been a great conversation. And look forward to staying connected.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. I got so much clarity around copy from listening to Eleanor. And it definitely reinforced some things that I've been a little bit slack in. It's one of those things, you know you should be doing X, but you get a little bit slack doing X. So it was a bit of a nudge for me to get back to just having a little bit more clarity around my writing, and especially my conversational writing as opposed to conversational writing. So I hope that you also got something from it. All Eleanor's contact details, of course, are in the show notes, and you can find the show notes on my website at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/134. Of course, if you want some business help or marketing help, then don't forget you can actually book a discovery chat with me. The link for that discovery chat appointment, so you can just book an appointment in my calendar that suits you and suits me, of course, are in the show notes as well. And I won't give you that address again because I just did. And of course, if you decide that you want to have a bit of a chat, we can sort of talk about your goals and your struggles and maybe even some copywriting as well. But that is it for episode 134. I will, of course, be back next Thursday with another great episode to simplify your business life in 2020. If you're enjoying the podcast, and hopefully you are because you've listened this far, I would love you to hit that subscribe button and maybe share with another superstar business owner who's doing that daily grind, who would really appreciate someone else making their business life a little bit simpler, and maybe even some tips and tricks around copywriting as well. So massive love coming your way if you do share my podcast. If you're listening, then take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram in your stories at @JenDonovan_. I'd love to cheer you on there as well. But of course, I will be back next Thursday for episode 135. But in the meantime, let's hang out on social. You'll find me on Instagram, Facebook, and of course LinkedIn. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.